Hey, just letting you know I'm going to be at Too Many Games doing a panel on Friday. Look for me. Feel free to talk to me. If you see me, I'll wear a Boundary Break shirt to make it obvious. Hope to see you there. Thank you so much. This game was a ton of fun to look at out of bounds. In fact, like the first second you start the game, there's a lot of interesting things to see. Like in the character creation screen here, if you just take the camera right out and just pan it back a bit, you can find some weird stuff off to the left here. And if you go over to it, you can see that they're body parts for the character creation screen. And it's completely untextured, and there's a whole like menagerie of different types of body parts for different races and things like that, as well as a wall that seems to be blocking out certain types of light so that it works correctly in the game engine. I was really shocked, though, to see something like this. It was really cool. Obviously, Elder Scrolls is way different from something like Fallout, but they're both Bethesda games, so they don't have anything like this in Fallout because you're primarily human, whereas with this game, you can just be whatever. Also, all the way over here is a room that the player can't access because what is inside that room is a bunch of NPCs or enemy characters that you're going to fight later on in the prologue. As you can see, they're all just kind of hanging out here, just waiting to be called in. And it's just funny because Bethesda games, they like to do things very, very differently. They're trying to make a whole game engine just function on a large scale, so they do a lot of fun, janky things to make their games even work properly. Speaking of which, I'm excited. I finally now cover one of Bethesda's classics in an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want to try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. And yeah, this is the remastered version. If you're really interested, I could look at the original version at some point, but I can almost guarantee so much of it's going to be exactly the same. Like, for example, there's this developer room here that was in the original game, and here it is again in the remaster. And if you've never heard of it, like me, well, you're going to find out about it because it's actually pretty hilarious. So, if you look at this guard, how do you think he would sound? Probably like kind of tough, right? Well, get a load of this.
When? I didn't know that. How can this be? Oh no, what do we do? I'm so scared.
And if you couldn't tell, all of these voice clips are Todd Howard. Yes, the Todd Howard.
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
So in the developer room, we have Todd Howard, basically, masquerading as a tough guy.
What? That really pisses me off.
Now look, Todd is a lot of things to a lot of people. I don't think anybody immediately thinks tough guy. But in this developer area, he is a armored guard, and he's all over the place. You can find him outside, you can find him inside. He also seems to have a concubine of some kind. I don't know what's going on here. By the way, the name of this map is Todd Test, and on Todd Test Island, you can also find Linda Carter. I think without any surprise whatsoever, Todd is probably a big fan, so we have a literal representation of Linda Carter on Todd Test Island. And all of this is just a distraction from the greatest thing that's in this dev area, which is that inside some of these buildings is a dev sphere. The dev sphere does not have anything inside of it. It's not entirely clear what exactly its function is or why it's here at all, but I will pick a dev sphere over Linda Carter any day. This is also not the only dev area in the whole entire game. There's also this one here where there's a giant island and you can see NPCs and stuff like that. So a lot of this you can see in the promotional material leading up to the release.
The guy behind him is a guard. So he committed a crime by attacking me. So the guard will attack him. These other guys are just trying to stay away. So eventually he figures out the guard is a much dangerous target than I am.
And I just recreated the shot for you right here. But also off in the distance here, you can see a monster ranch, essentially, where there is a bunch of different variety of enemies that you can encounter, and you can fight them and you can kill them if you want. I took this as a great opportunity to take the camera inside of all of them and see if there's anything interesting to see, most of which was just uvulas, which I learned from my chat in Twitch that apparently uvulas are very rare in animals, like humans have them, but not most animals, so I guess that's why this is a bit weird to see uvulas in so many different creatures in Oblivion. I mean, there you go. Boundary Break, where you can learn about uvulas, I guess. Speaking of which, why don't we get to the core of the show and actually show you something out of bounds? Which one of the most interesting things I saw was that deep below the environment at any given time is another version of your character, and I had to do some deductive to figure out why this character is here. Eventually, I got the final piece of the puzzle, and I was able to figure out that yes, that character down below is the pause screen version of your character. Your character is not transported or has an environment put around him at any given time. It is instead duplicated and shoved underneath the environment, and the game takes like a screenshot of whatever you looked at last and then puts that image behind the character underneath the environment. It's fascinating stuff. I love things like this, which brings me over to another fascinating thing about Bethesda games. It is the classic, out of bounds treasure chest. Why is the treasure chest here? If you've never seen the Boundary Break episode on Skyrim or Fallout, you will now know that the reason why they put these down here is because this is where the inventory is for all the shopkeepers. So whenever you buy something, the items actually get withdrawn and deposited from this box down below. And then I took the camera up here to try to see the entire environment in one shot, and it's not the entire environment. There is some missing pieces, but it is a good amount of the entire game map. The thing I noticed most of all is that once you go above the clouds, it reveals something, which is kind of neat, which is an outline of the map. And you can see little squares forming lines that kind of indicate quadrants. It seems to be like a 9-square grid. Also, here's the map with those Skyrim Mountains off in the distance and all that stuff. Which I know some people are going to ask, what does it look like to have the Skyrim Mountains up close? So here's some footage of that. It's not too exciting because it stays sort of low poly and, you know, you're not going to get Skyrim. But it is neat that they have the mountain out here. Also, here's a zoom out of Paradise. When you zoom it all the way out like this, you can see that the water is one giant square, and, you know, the skybox is, of course, very paradisey. It's very nice looking. Now let's take a look at some things up close, like these butterflies. If you take the camera up to this butterfly, you can see that it is surprisingly detailed, actually. It has a texture on its butt, and it also has the little loopy thing on its mouth. Okay, let me figure out what the name of that thing is real quick.
Proboscis.
It looks like it's called a proboscis. Anyways, got hung up on that. The point is that these butterflies are immensely detailed. It's really cool. But one thing that is definitely not overly detailed are these audience members for the arena. Taking the camera up to them can show you that their clothing and faces, they're a little bit lower detail, but it's especially noticeable with the Argonians because their eyes do not go anywhere close to their eye sockets, so they just look a little goofy. And then I wanted to show you what it looks like when we take the camera up to the moon. I picked a really nice version of the moon here. It's with the Oblivion gate off in the distance. And you take the camera over and you can see that it's completely flat. And before you say it, this game is a work of fiction. Don't go there. But honestly, from a developer standpoint, making it a flat texture saves up a ton on resources. Again, the perspective of the thing is always kind of forced on the player because of the distance, so they'll never have to worry about the three-dimensional depth that a player might need to actually be convinced that it's the actual moon. And although this isn't the actual edge of the world in Oblivion, it is kind of neat to see that depending on the player position, the world will just kind of load up certain areas. And if you take the camera way past where the player is, you can see things like this where the land just sort of ends. It just drops vertically into a flatter surface down below the water level there. Other things you can see way off in the distance when you're not near your player are low poly models like this mermaid here. You might remember this statue, but like here you can see the low poly version and it's great. It kind of reminds me of the furniture from Animal Crossing on GameCube. It's got a very special kind of detail to it. Then we're going to take the camera inside the Imperial City and show you what that looks like at low poly. It honestly is very detailed for what it is, except for over here, you could see that the developers forgot to texture these little pieces right here, and so we get these really low poly dev textures, which is kind of cool. And here's another statue with a knight holding a sword, and I love that from here, the texture sort of looks like TV static, if anybody even remembers what that looks like these days. Everything in this town has it, by the way, not just the statue, but also the buildings themselves. And here's what the main character looks like in first-person mode. The arms and the quiver It's all there all the time, and there was a viewer request, and as always, you can follow me on Twitter if you'd like, and you can send a viewer request before the video comes out, and you can also get updates on what episode's coming next. Anyways, they wanted to see what it looks like when you draw the bow in first person, and it's pretty legit, honestly. Nothing about it looks too weird from this perspective, minus the lack of a torso and head and legs and feet. Okay, it's weird, but you know what I mean as far as how the bow looks like from another angle. There's also surprisingly fully modeled bodies underneath the underwear, which is like tied to all the characters in the game. I can't show you that here on YouTube, but of course I'll have footage of that on the Patreon. And if you subscribe to the Patreon, you'll also have access to all the other discoveries that are just not safe for YouTube. Yes, the bodies are fully modeled completely underneath. Well, actually, the clothing is attached to the body on the lower part. And that's all I got for now. Like I said before, check me out at Too Many Games. I'll have a panel going. It'll be a ton of fun. I'm going to be there on Friday. So let's get a good crowd going and have a good time. And outside of that, just thank you so much for watching the video. Take care.